Morning, everyone. Hey, Lucas. I just saw your email, so I'm glad you're here to get some questions and help on that. I'm going to pop on over to my Google Classroom so I can take a quick peek at your um, assignment so far. Let's see what we got. Nothing. Okay. I didn't know if you had part of it done already. I figured I can get a jump start on taking a look at your treatment. What is it that Lucas that you're going to? And good morning to Ryan and Luke as well. Lucas, what is it that that we're going to discuss? Like, what's the main focus of our documentary, and who are we interviewing? Ooh, hot. Because obviously that's going to dictate a little bit my suggestions and advice for questions. Lucas, I don't know if you heard that question or not, but who are we interviewing and what's the focus of our documentary? If you give me that information, I can help work some example. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, never mind. I'm on a delay and I keep forgetting. Um, okay, I mean, if it's your life like as a whole, like if we're not narrowing it down to a specific time frame or a specific set of hobbies or interests or anything, um, you can kind of go a little broad with your questions. And some of the questions that I've been recommending to people in this case has been that, and especially with family members and especially with parents, um, is to try and ask questions that might get them to tell a story. Um, because I think when we see them get caught up in that story a little bit, it's very endearing and it's very engaging. And so, um, this could be a general. What's your favorite Lucas story? Because I'm sure your parents have stories like that, like locked and loaded, ready to go. And if not, put them on the spot a little bit, get them to think. And I'm sure they might say something that could be a little embarrassing. But I think if you're comfortable with that, I think that's a really great way to get personal insight, right? Um, if you want to even go like a step broader and say, what are like do a pros and cons. And I know that might be really weird to hear your parents say not so great things, but I think they're going to sugarcoat it a little bit, right? So you can ask, what are some things that you're really proud of Lucas for? And what are some things that maybe you're not so proud of Lucas for? And I think if you get both, I think it gives you a healthy mix to choose either or in your documentary, right? You don't have to use the bad stuff. You can just use the good stuff, but maybe getting them to answer that question um, can be really insightful. And then if you think back, as my last example might be, this is what think like, what's the earliest memory that you have? And I don't mean that as a question. I mean, for you specifically, Lucas, what's the earliest memory you have as a human being? And it's like a really weird question, right? And the older you get, the more abstract some of those thoughts and memories become, but you can still visualize stuff in your brain. But I mean, you don't know what you were like as a baby, but your family does, right? Your parents do. So, what kind of baby was Lucas when he was like really little, and what kind of kid was he growing up? These are things that they kind of have an outsider perspective of, because they watched you grow from a baby to who you are now. And, uh, you know, you might not have some of those early memories that they do. I think that would be interesting to hear. Um, and so I know those are like kind of generalized, but I think generalized in a really good way because they elicit a strong response. So that would be like three quick examples of what you might ask, your mom. And then, depending on where your documentary ends up, you can always throw the question out there. And please feel free to ask as many questions in your interviews as possible. What do you see in the future for Lucas? Could be a good way to get them to kind of project about, where they think you're going to end up. And that's really great for a documentary like this because that story hasn't been written yet, right? You might not know and they may not know, but maybe they have some idea of what they think you'll do or what you'll become or the kind of person that you're going to continue to, evolve to be. That's always a good way to end a documentary like this because it's finite, but it has an eye on the future. And because that future doesn't exist yet, it kind of opens up the ending to kind of, be optimistic and hopeful in what will eventually be the rest of your life. Not to get too deep with it, but, that could be a good one to add on there as well. So small, I don't want to say rant, but was any of that helpful, useful? Do you want me to break any of those down again? I mean, those were my quick go-tos as far as good things to ask parents. Okay, well, good. Hopefully, maybe it'll spawn some other things that come to mind. And who knows? Like maybe in the midst of one of those answers, don't feel like you need to stick to your script. If one of your parents says something that maybe you didn't expect, or like you've got a follow up question on it, like go for it. Like don't feel like you just need to only ask what you have planned for. That's just to get you started. So if you get a response to something and you want to continue asking questions about that, then press, keep going. I think you should take the mentality with an interview that you are looking to get certain answers based on the questions that you have, but you always need to be open to the opportunity to ask questions on the spot that you didn't plan for but have come up kind of naturally. Like I never sit down to do an interview with an objective of, okay, I've got 3 questions. This will take 10 minutes. Let's just get it over and done with and be on our way. I'm always like, hey, I roll the camera early and I'll just have casual conversation with them until, we get started. And depending on the depth of that interview, it might be, 1 or 2 minutes. It might be 10, 15 minutes. Who cares? I'll delete that footage later. But sometimes you get like a little nugget that, you can use, or it might open up a possibility for more questions later. It also gets them a lot more comfortable as well. And then, of course, if you know that you're going to end up talking about, something really specific, even if it's just for a moment, ask them a question, based on that too. Whether it's about a hobby or interest, or like, how old was Lucas when he first got interested in, basketball? And then maybe they can talk about that a little bit, like if you've got specific things you're going to mention, work a question about those things into that interview, because then you have more of that interview you can use at a later point in your edit. Ryan, Luke, how are you guys doing with your assignments? Oh, they're both turned in. Let me take a quick look. So we got here Ryan. What the hell was that? Okay, something broke in my house. All right, Ryan. You got some good stuff here. I would say your questions might need a little work. Right. And so just to kind of touch upon even the example I did with Lucas, right? Your first question to your mom is, was I annoying when I was younger? What if she just looks at you and goes, yeah, you were really annoying? And then there's nothing else. So that might, you might even want to go a step back with that question, and kind of use that as a follow up. What if you just go back a step to say, what was I like when I was younger? And let your mom kind of maybe rattle off a list of things, right? And that might take you to, did you find that I was annoying? And I think that's a interesting question. I think as my younger brother has a 3-year-old. One of my really close friends also has a 3-year-old, and so like as parents, I know that of course they love their kids, but there are moments where you just want to like they're frustrated because their kids are 3 and they don't know a lot. So yes, they're being annoying and obnoxious, but you can't get mad at a 3-year-old for that. So I think asking your mom, were you annoying as a kid? I think you phrase that question because you might know something that leads you to think that answer is yes. And if so, narrow it down a little bit, Because if your mom goes, oh my God, you were a pain in the ass. Okay, like I would take that moment to say, well, why? Like, tell me a story of where I was just really obnoxious. And again, I think tell me a story is a great lead in to try and get a really strong response. Let's bounce over to Luke's. Let's see what we got here. Okay, soccer career. Nice. All right, so we're talking to family. Luke, the only thing I would consider asking, especially, and I apologize, I don't know your parents' names off the top of my head, but if you're talking to mom or dad, the one thing I would consider adding is, why did you make me play soccer? Right? Like, as a 4 or 5-year-old kid getting into sports, you don't really have any say sometimes. Your parents just sign you up for stuff, and all of a sudden, every weekend now you're going to go play soccer. So maybe even just asking them, what was it about soccer that, made you put me into that sport? Did you think that I would like it as a kid? And when did you realize that, hey, he's pretty good at this and he should keep going? Like, I think there's something there. I would just kind of ask them why, right? Always try and take the mindset of what you had, especially when it's about yourself, what you had control over. You probably didn't have control over playing soccer for the first time. You were probably thrust upon it, right? So maybe ask them why. Why soccer? Were there any other sports they tried, right? Were they like, okay, we're going to do soccer in the fall and baseball in the spring? And, like, how did they come to those decisions? And when did they let you decide, hey, pick one? Or, like I have questions based on your questions for them. So I think that's always good. And you may find some of these kind of come up naturally as you're interviewing them. So of course, don't be afraid to go off script and follow up with stuff on the spot. If you want to get really good at conducting interviews, don't look at it like an interview, look at it like a conversation. Of course, there's information that you want to get out of, the people you're talking to, but if you turn it into a conversation, it makes them a little bit more comfortable. You'll get better responses, and I think that's how I go about it. I've had a lot of success with that, and kind of just sitting down and almost forgetting the camera's even there and just trying to get people to talk, because that's really what it should be. And therein lies the challenge. That's a great question, Ryan. It is one of the harder things to do without a tripod. So you can kind of go about it in a couple ways, depending on obviously like your home setup, and if you've got the luxury of trying to find some shelf space or counter space, or if you can, prop that phone up and keep it steady. If you do need to hold it, of course, like if that's worst case scenario, that's fine. I'm not going to hold anybody accountable for shaky shots if you have to hold your phone while you interview. What I would recommend, for as much as possible, and this is going to be the one I'm trying to find, like my phone. The one weird thing that you may have to like have someone do. So if this is my phone, and if you are my interview subject, right, and I'm holding up to you, so you can already tell I'm holding the phone kind of off. I can dart my eyes over and see the screen, but normally what I would tell people to do in this instance is when you hit record, you don't need to kind of put this out in front of them and hold it to their face, because that's a little intimidating. So what I would normally do is I would hold it off to the center a little bit so that you can still see the screen if you need to, all right? But if you're interviewing your mom, let's say, tell your mom to look at you. All right. And so that way she's making eye contact with you. All right. You're holding the phone close to your face so you can see it if you need to glance over. It shouldn't be too shaky because you're not going to be like doing this, but you'll be able to hold it relatively steady. And then in a worst case scenario, if you do need like two hands on it, is hold the phone up like this. All right. So you can keep it steady and you can see it, but you're going to hold your hand out for a second and say, all right, Mom, I need you to look over here. And it's going to be really weird, but I want you to talk to this space, okay? All right, and then their eye contact will be over here. You can go back to the phone, all right, and it'll look like they're talking to the person kind of off camera. So that's how I would go about it. I know when I conduct my interviews, I want them making eye contact with me, and depending on the situation, that might not always be possible. And so even if I have a camera nearby, I always tell them, okay, don't look directly at the camera. I just think aesthetically it's not a good look. I kind of want them to, it's a little bit more engaging for an audience to feel that they are kind of catching this conversation and they're not part of it. And remember, when someone looks at the camera and speaks, it's as if they're talking directly to your audience. I always try and offset that a little bit. So I know that's like an in-depth answer, Ryan, to a really great question. That I'm hoping I was gonna spend some time going over for our pre-production class next, but you brought it up early, and I think that's a really, really great thing to try and do, is to just kind of close, right? Get that camera rolling, and then boom, we're here, so that they can make eye contact, camera records, I can glance over and see from time to time, or just tell them, look over here and talk, and I'm gonna be here, and that's okay too. Just to make sure that shot's as good as possible. I know it's not going to be super steady without a tripod, and that's okay. Ryan, I saw that, the document disappeared for a second and that you were in there working, so cool. Because my plan for this afternoon is to go through and grade these and return them, so that way folks that aren't here now, I can kind of just give some quick tips to and a thumbs up to, so that they can feel ready to move on to production next class. And while I'm on that note, let me bring up my calendar here for a sec, just to go over a few things that have changed. Oh, hold on. Oh yeah, of course. Okay. All right. So talk about our calendar here. All right. So today, Tuesday, June 2nd, of course, we know that our project is due at the end of the day on the 12th. Okay. And so I'm going to follow a similar structure that I used for the last project, as the feedback you guys in my other classes gave on the production and post-production days set aside for question, answers, and help was really helpful. And that if they didn't need that time for help, that they were able to utilize that time to either work on the project directly or to take care of, other classwork so that they can work on the project later. And I understand now, kind of being in the home stretch, your time management skills are going to be that much more challenged, because I'm sure every class is coming into, their final project or their final assignment or their final test. And so there's going to be maybe a little bit more on your plate this time around than has been in the past. And so you want to make sure that you're managing your time properly. So Thursday and Monday of next week are going to be production-oriented days, as far as going over how to shoot some stuff or questions on uploading and things like that. I may skew into some post-production stuff as early as Monday, because Wednesday and Friday would be our post-production Q&A help troubleshooting sessions. However, on Wednesday the 10th, because it will be a B-Day, I will not be hosting class that day. I'm going to be heading into the high school to do some graduation prep with Dr. Petrowski and a couple of the other administrators. And so I will just be unavailable in the morning during our class time. I should be available in the afternoon for like emails and questions like that. So if you have them, send them in. I'll try and get through them in the afternoon as quickly as I can. But that day was chosen a little strategically, as the options for next week were Wednesday or Thursday. Thursday is going to be the last day that I see my A-Day class before the project is due, because I'm also saying for them, they can have the 12th to work on it. And by the end of the day on Friday the 12th, I really do mean the end of the day. So don't feel that while we have class that day, right, you don't need to get it in by the end of this class. If you want to work on it in the evening, if you want to get it to me, at midnight, that's perfectly fine. As long as when I wake up Saturday to sit down and grade these, they're all 11:59 p.m. or earlier, then you're good. I would rather you take the extra time, right? I don't want to say, oh, get it in by noon, because that's when our class ends. I know I'm not going to grade them till Saturday, so why not give you the extra 12 hours if you need it to get some stuff done and make sure these are really, really good. That's going to put us for this week. I know this week is going to be a little weird. I don't know if you guys received the email in regards to locker cleanout that's taking place at the school this week. So each grade has an assigned day, and each hour of the 4-hour school day is kind of broken down by first letter of the last name. And so I'm going to use these days for screening days, but if you are going into the school during our time, obviously you won't be part of that screening, but there's going to be nothing as far as like obviously new material. I'm not going to cover anything in the last week of school. This would normally be when our finals are. And so I figured we should benefit the fruits of our labor in doing these projects and, screening them, because I do feel that if you're putting in the time and energy, yes, of course, I'm going to watch them and critique and grade them, but, we want to have an exhibition of this work and, share that with everyone in class. And so that'll be this week. Our last day together will be the 22nd. Again, and that's fine. That's going to be our last day to just kind of hang, say goodbyes, and things, which is really sad because I can't do that in person. And as you guys can tell, there are 4 of us here now, which means there's 18 of us that aren't in class. So I won't get to say goodbye to those people at all. But with some graduation stuff still in flux, I don't know what, honestly, there might be a day where, and I get the call, hey, we need you to come in and do this now. Okay. Then that's what I have to do. If things change, of course, I will let you guys know as soon as possible, or as soon as I know, and can let you know what days I'll be available and what days I won't. And if there's anything urgent where if next Wednesday it means that, you guys want to come into my Thursday classes, to get some help or ask some questions, shoot me an email, let me know, hey, Mr. Leonard, I can really use some time with you. Can I come to your class tomorrow? I'm available at this time. If you let me know that on Wednesday, I can shoot you an email with the link to my 8A class streams on Thursday, and you can just hop on in and join. So just wanted to outline the calendar real quick as well while I had you folks here and some folks checking in. Later, I hope we'll see that information just so that they know what they've got to work with as far as the project and the rest of our time together in June. I will most likely put up a post for the final project turn-in on Classroom at the start of next week. So on Monday when I have you guys, I will put that up there so that way folks, as things get done over the week, if they're done early, you can turn them in. The one thing, and this came up during the last project with just one student, but I kind of want to clarify with it. If you turn it in, say, like Tuesday of next week, it doesn't mean I'll be able to look at it until, when I would normally sit down the grade. So I'm putting the responsibility on you guys to make sure that as far as the checklist goes of things I'm looking for the project, that you have them all. I don't have the luxury of time to watch projects that are turned in early and say, oh, you're missing X, Y, and Z, and then sit back later and grade those fully. So, when you're turning it in, just make extra certain you're going down alongside that project requirements list and you're saying, do I have this? Yes. Okay, great. Because if you want to turn it in early, make sure, if it's off your plate, you can say, I'm good, I'm done. Then fantastic. I won't have a chance to look at it until probably this weekend. I know the 13th and 14th and probably most of this week are going to be spent grading these projects. And so let that be my burden. I don't have the luxury, unfortunately, to look at anything too early. If you have questions on things, I'm all there. I just can't pre-screen a work. All right, that also means, just like kind of like the last session or the last project that we had with our production and post-production class streams, of course, they will always start promptly at 11 o'clock. And, if no one is coming or engaging in the chat or anything, then I will conclude those early. They tend to still be at least 30 minutes or so. So I will always be there. But if you're popping in the class at 11:40, the stream might be down if no one's been there. So just make sure that if you do have questions or need help, come at the beginning of class, because I'll stay as long as there's people here. But I will conclude the stream if there's no activity or no one that needs help during that time. Does that all make sense to all you guys? Do you have any questions on that? Concerns? Is it clear? Let me know in the chat. That would be fantastic. And then anything else that we need help with today, let me know, because I'm here for you. But as we transition to our production and post-production days, for help and support and troubleshooting and feedback and questions and answers, I'm here for. But we're transitioning that onus to you to make sure you're on top of your stuff and getting things done the right way. Ryan is all good, as I thought he would be. That's wonderful. And Ryan, Luke, I know you guys had turned in your assignments for today. And so if you feel comfortable, confident, like Ryan, I know you unsubmitted, made some changes and turned it back in. So if you feel comfortable where you are and that assignment's finished, you feel free to head on out. If you got 30 minutes you can use for another class or just to kind of relax before your next one. For the book return, do you think it means the book are... That's absolutely what it means, yes. Yeah, so any textbooks that you have need to be returned that day. You'll also have an opportunity to pick up any art projects, and you'll have an opportunity to clean out your locker. So if you have books that are in your locker, you'll just need to go to your locker first to return those. You can also take care of any fines you have as well. for like, I don't know, book fines if you lost the book or it's damaged. They might let you know. Cafeteria fines or Chromebook fines as well. Yeah, the email is pretty thorough about that stuff. Um, I am going to reach out to Dr. Petrowski, though, because he did mention specifically if you have art projects, you can go in and pick those up. I would think that our class is considered an art. And so I don't know if that means there'll be an opportunity for us to go in and get things off computers. I unfortunately don't think that will be the case. So if you are looking for final projects, I'm going to have our Xserve backed up. I'm going to start the backup process when I go into the building next week on Wednesday. But essentially, anything that's on the server will be on a hard drive. So if you're like, oh, Mr. Leonard, do you have this project? I will probably have it on a hard drive at some point if you haven't been uploading things to your Google Drive as we've been moving through the year. So you can always reach out and see if I have that. If it's a work in progress, it's not. I'm not taking stuff off each computer. Yeah, Dan, I went through some stuff at the beginning of our class here. Who are we talking to, and what is what's the focus and subject of your documentary? Obviously, I know it's you, but like, is there a certain time period of your life? Is there a certain hobby or interest we're focusing on? Let me know that, and let me know who we're talking to, and I can try and guide you with some suggestions. As I try and crack my spine here. Oh God. Oh, okay. Um, so I'm guessing we're interviewing your family, right? Uh, how old were you when this took place? Because depending on the age, there might be certain things that you remember that they don't, and vice versa. They might remember a lot more if you were like really, really young. And I understand if it gets too personal, like you don't want to talk about it openly in the chat. We can switch over to email if you want. Um, but how old were you when the injury took place? Eight or nine. Okay, so you probably have a decent memory about it. Um, and then depending on what it was and the severity, some of the first things that jump to my mind as far as like examples and maybe things to ask would be, um, I think anytime there's a moment of crisis or danger, especially, think from your parents' perspective, right? Like, I don't know if they were there when it happened. I don't know if they saw it happen. Like if this was, like God forbid, and if it was like a car accident where your parents were there, that's very different than say you were playing baseball and they were watching your game and you took a line drive to the face or something like, right? Like they were either involved or they were a spectator of it. But I think maybe trying to get or asking what was their initial reaction, you know, when you found out or saw that this happened to Dan. Um, were there any concerns about, him surviving or overcoming this? How did you think that something like this would impact, him in the future? And what did you do, or what did you try to do to make sure that, everything after this moment was as normal as possible for him? Your sister might be in a similar situation because she's a little bit older, but not an adult, right? So to ask her what she thought about, like, her perspective of what happened, of course, could be really interesting too, because she's a spectator and she's concerned, but she doesn't have, the same kind of power that your parents do to, like, act on it, right? Your sister could have been like, well, oh my God, what's going on? Your parents, meanwhile, might have been rushing you to a hospital. If you want to, you might want to ask them, do they feel responsible for what happened? I mean, again, without knowing exactly, like, the whole story, and that could be a great question to ask even right there. Walk us through that day. And I would even say the incident. I would say, like, hey, mom, dad, let's go from the morning up until this thing happened, because they're going to start to paint a picture. And I think, and this is what I said to Lucas, anytime you can interview someone and get them to start telling a story, boom, we're hooked immediately, right? Because they're not just saying nice things about you, and they're not saying what you were like. And those are also questions you can ask. Hey, what was Dan like as a little kid? But in this particular instance, walk us through, from your memory, the day that this incident happened. And, you're going to get this slow build up until the incident, and then their reactions for afterwards. And I would push for that, and then kind of look to the future. Did you think that something like this would have a drastic impact on Dan's life? What were some of the challenges that Dan had shortly thereafter? Were you afraid of Dan not having a normal life because of this? And again, I some of this might sound really extreme, Dan, without knowing the specifics of what took place, and I'm sure you're going to discuss that in your documentary. But that's kind of the direction I would go for them. And then see what they give you there, as it pertains to this specific incident. If you want to go kind of general, great options could be, what was Dan like as a baby, and as a toddler growing up, right? Because you probably can't remember your earliest memory, but they will, and they'll be able to talk about you as someone who was their child growing up, where you might not remember things before, 5 or 6 years old. Or maybe you do. I don't know, like, what my earliest memory is. I just have a scattering of images and thoughts, but I don't know how old I was. So they would have a different perspective on you as a kid from, birth until, realistically, I would think 3 or 4. I don't know how much you remember from that age, but that's a decent chunk of time of your life that you might not have memories of, so that could be a place to go. Kind of asking, well, what does the future hold for Dan? Could be a really great question to kind of get them to hypothesize what they foresee for you. And that speaks to what they think of you as a person and an individual. And I can't imagine any parent would say, that they see doom and gloom. I'm sure it's going to be very positive, but, hearing that from a parent and a loved one, I think, is always impactful and meaningful. And of course, if the documentary is about you, then we want that impact and that meaning. So I know that wasn't like a direct, hey, ask them X, Y, and Z, but does that kind of give you some ideas as to what you could ask or how you can phrase those questions to them? If not, let me know. I can try and make it a little bit more clear. Anything, Dan? Helpful? Yay? Nay? Let me know. He texted them, right? Cool. Awesome. Thank you for letting me know. I know it was kind of like a ramble, but I always try and tap into very quickly my instinct when I hear, especially like questions on stuff, like or how to do questions for stuff. Like my natural curiosity will immediately jump to certain things, and so I just try and tap into that as quickly as possible because normally then that steamrolls into, some more structured stuff. Let's do a quick refresh here. See who we've got. Yep. Down one. That's okay. All right. Any other questions for folks that are still in our chat here today? If not, I'm probably going to wrap up our stream soon. That was a really quick 45 minutes. Like, holy cow, that was fast. I feel like it just started. All right, and then just a reminder for folks that are still getting stuff in, I will be sitting down to grade this assignment this afternoon, so I can give you that green light, go move into production mode, or just give some advice or tips on questions or things like that if there's things that need to be fleshed out. I had some people that turned this in yesterday and didn't have a treatment, and they had everything else. They just forgot the whole synopsis. Or they put down like, I'm interviewing my mom, but didn't put down the question. So make sure you have all that stuff. But I'll be moving through these this afternoon. So look for those to be returned soon, and then hopefully you can shift over into production mode. Start shooting as soon as possible and start uploading your video as soon as possible. Like if you're shooting an interview Thursday, great. As soon as that interview is done, upload to Google Drive. And if you really want to go the extra mile, upload the Google Drive and start a WeVideo project and bring it into WeVideo. Anything you can do to speed up the process later is going to benefit you. The last thing that you want to do is have everything on your phone and then say like Wednesday of next week, okay, well, it's due Friday, so I'll just upload everything today and I'll get right to work. Well, if you're uploading everything that day, what if that takes a couple hours and all of a sudden now you're just waiting, right? If you kind of work in chunks, I feel like that's the best way to go about it. And if you bring things in the WeVideo, they can transcode it and then it's ready for you. So like I would move into an edit, having everything in there. Heck, I would even kind of edit as I go too. If I have an interview, I'm bringing that interview into my timeline. I'm cutting out the parts I don't want. I'm leaving in the parts I do want. And I might even bring pictures in and start to rotate them and flip them if I need to. Just anything you can do to stay on top of the edit. I think waiting till the very end, you will find that the project becomes a little bit more challenging. Excuse me. All right. On that note, I'm going to wrap it up for the day. Like I said, I'll be grading these this afternoon. So if you have questions on things, email me. I'll be by my computer for most of the afternoon and early evening. I'll do my best to reply as quickly as possible to you. And then, of course, on Friday, we're going to kind of shift into, Thursday, we're going to shift into our first production day. So come out to the stream if you need help or have questions on things or just need some advice. We'll be there for that. And then, we'll work the same schedule we did last time. So thank you guys for coming today. I'm hoping that the questions you had were answered for you in a meaningful way. And, even if it helped, I think I helped everyone here just a little bit, but I'm glad that you guys were here to take advantage of that. So thank you. We'll see you briefly on Tuesday or Thursday, even if you're just checking in to say, Mr. Leonard, I'm good. See you later. Cool. Just let me know. And then we'll head into next week, final week of the project, June 12th. All right. I will see everybody on Thursday as I continue to get my days mixed up. Gosh, this hour flew by and this week is just weird. All right. I'll see you all later. Thank you again for today. Talk to you soon. Be happy, be healthy.